because we're asking whether there really is a big gulf between Labour and the Conservatives on the deficit and spending. Have you been on a bus when the top deck roof flew off because it hit a bridge or something? And how rude was the inspector on a train when you had the wrong ticket? That as well. Let us start, though, on the, I guess, biggest news today, which is that MPs are going to shortly vote on whether to allow an IVF technique which uses DNA from 3 different people. It's been described as creating babies from 3 parents instead of 2, with one of those parents providing only what is called mitochondrial DNA. Now, the mitochondria provide energy to the cell, and they have their own DNA, which doesn't affect characteristics like appearance, hair color, and so on. But the mitochondrial DNA from the donor would get passed on to subsequent generations. If MPs vote in favour of the techniques, then Britain would be the first country in the world to legalise this procedure. It could help about 150 couples each year who are at risk of passing on certain genetic diseases. But some people are not comfortable with it. The Church of England and the Catholic Church have opposed the idea. We're going to talk to Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg shortly, who's among those expressing doubts about the technique. We'll also talk to Professor Lisa Jardine, who backs it. She has been in the past the chair of the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Authority. First and most importantly, we go to Liz Curtis, who's at Westminster. Good afternoon, Liz.
Good afternoon.
And you can tell us about what mitochondrial disease does because you lost your daughter to it.
Yeah, that's right. I lost my 3rd daughter, Lily, to a mitochondrial disease when she was just 8 months old. She was 7 weeks old when she was diagnosed and given just days to live. I think what we need to remember when we're talking about this is that there's no cure and there's no treatment for mitochondrial disease, and it's extremely cruel, debilitating, and can be extremely painful for those who suffer.
And so when you had your daughter in 2006, to all intents and purposes, she was a healthy little girl, is that right?
She was a healthy little girl.
You couldn't tell?
Yeah, she was small. She was always small, but the doctors, there was nothing wrong with her. She had tests to see why she was so small, but nothing was wrong. And it was when she was 7 weeks old was when we noticed things weren't right, and she started to have seizures where she would just stop breathing.
And what then began to happen to her?
Well, she had, I think, 3 or 4 altogether, these seizures where she stopped breathing, and the final one she had a cardiac arrest. She had to be defibrillated and rushed to intensive care, and she was taken straight to the Evelina Children's Hospital in London and put on a ventilator. And it was here that doctors told me that this is where they thought she had a mitochondrial disease. There's no cure, there's no treatment, and they were very sorry, but she was going to die. And
it's just essentially the whole body begins to seize up and you can't do anything about it.
That's right. Mitochondria exists within the cell, and it causes cell failure. And when the cell dies, it can cause organ failure, and Lily actually died of heart failure. It was the cells around her heart that didn't work, and when she did die, her heart had completely dilated and wasn't working.
And do you know you were carriers, or does this actually just spontaneously appear in a child of almost any parents?
No, we didn't know. We have 2 other children who are healthy, and it was a huge shock to us when we heard the news.
So what do you think MPs should do today?
Well, I'm in favour of mitochondrial donation. I think it will give families who have no other options a chance to have a healthy child that's genetically theirs. At the moment, for families, it won't do anything to save the children that we have living. It's not a cure; it's a prevention, and it will enable our families to have a child free of mitochondrial disease.
Jacob Rees-Mogg MP is, I gather, sitting next to you listening to that. Jacob, does that persuade you that it's worth a try?
I can't not be moved by what Liz has been saying and the pain that she went through, that it's what makes this debate so difficult, that on the one hand there is a prospect for distressed parents of a healthy child. On the other, there is the issue of changing the genes and doing something that no other country has done, that is a fundamental change in what medicine does. It's not a cure, as Liz quite correctly said. It is creating a different person. And is that an ethical boundary that we should be comfortable crossing?
Liz, if the MPs vote for something that would effectively mean your third child was not Lily but someone else, then I guess your daughter doesn't even get the 8 months she had. Is that one way of looking at it?
No, because that's not quite true, because it would create the same baby that would be. It's not changing any of the genetic information whatsoever. The baby would still be the baby it would have been always, just in a body that works. It will have the same hair, it will have the same eyes, it will have the same personality as it would have had. Nothing has changed.
So Jacob, why be against it then? Because you'd rather like being against someone trying to mend a broken leg or have insulin for diabetes.
I don't think that's right, that if you do those two things, you're not changing the person. But I think when you change the genes, inevitably you are, because you will pass on different genes to any children, and that the genes are fundamental to what the person is, and that hair colour is an accident of what a person is. That can be changed by dyeing the hair, and that doesn't change the person. But that changing the mitochondria, even though it's only a small percentage of the total genetic makeup of a person, is a fundamental change, because you're introducing that third parent in however small a way, but in a pretty fundamental way, in the effect that it would have on the child.
Okay, Professor Lisa Jardine, you back the technique. What do you say to Jacob?
Well, I was unsure during the 4 years when I chaired the HFEA and when the Secretary of State for Health asked the HFEA...
I should say, sorry, this is the human fertilization.
I'm sorry, I should say
it was a while back that we referred to it. Yeah. No, that's fine.
Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority, the regulator for all assisted reproduction. And this, of course, is assisted reproduction. And the Secretary of State for Health asked the organisation, the regulator, to conduct, over a period of almost 4 years, a consultation with the public, with the churches, incidentally, with clinics, with researchers. It has been called the most thorough consultation and most evidence-based consultation that has ever been conducted.
And the arguments we just heard came up.
And they all came up, and they were all resolved. Now, you could say that this focus at the moment on what are largely, I have to say, red herrings, and Liz was, the mothers are so wonderfully articulate and clear and well informed about what is happening. And they are easy with things like the risk. They understand, if I go in for a hip operation, there's a risk, they understand about the risk. There's a sort of red herring at the moment.
Well, Jacobs isn't a red herring.
No, but it was resolved. What I was going to say
Not for him, though.
No, but if you voted for the party that didn't win the election, would you stomp around saying, well, I'm not going to obey anything that they said because I don't agree with it, right? And that's what we have got today.
Well, what's the answer to Jacob?
The answer to Jacob is that, as he can tell by going onto the regulator's site, by going onto the Wellcome Trust site, he can see all the data, and incidentally, Science-Wise, which ran the consultation, all the evidence, all the papers showing how minute this change
Okay,
is.
it's a minute change, Jacob. That's the answer.
It's a fundamental change, because it's a change to the genetic makeup.
Okay,
that
you've
will
said
be
that, James.
Inherited. So
Yeah.
that's important. But may I just make the point on democracy, that we don't live in a country where a panel of experts has a consultation and then that's voted into law. We have a system where members of parliament are responsible to their constituents, and they vote according to their constituents' requirements, their constituents' correspondence, and their own conscience.
This is true.
I don't think this panel of experts,
No, it wasn't.
to use Professor Jardine's term, is any more than a red herring.
If you listened carefully, you would have heard that I said that was one amongst a whole range of consultations, one of which was with the public, with focus groups, face-to-face, public meetings. And I would like to say to you, as an MP, I have had 3 emails this morning from constituents of yours saying, what are they supposed to do, because they desperately want the vote to go through. So I'm not sure which poll of your constituents.
All right. Lisa, on a factual point, do people know if they're carrying this mitochondrial problem?
No, generally they only know when they have a child who is damaged beyond repair.
Right, so in that case, in most cases, this wouldn't be of any use, would it?
No, in most cases it would be a second child. you see.
Right, okay.
Because, and there are people who are saying, well, at least that disabled child had a life. I will not go down there. I will not even listen. I'll go la, 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 because these children have no life, right? They are in pain. Their organs are collapsing. Their parents know they will probably die certainly before they're 4 years old. So I do think, on the basis of consulting as widely as you could, and incidentally overseas, that we should take this tiny step, which is to allow the Secretary of State
I can
to
hear
put this,
Jacob rustling
wait
here.
a minute, to put it on the statute book, and then the regulator can regulate the process from then on. At the moment, they can't regulate it because it's not legal.
All right, Jacob?
I am not convinced. I will be voting against it because I think it is such a fundamental step. It's worth bearing in mind that about 1 in 200 babies are born with some form of mitochondrial disorder. Not all of them are of the seriousness of Liz's daughter, and that therefore you have this valid issue of people leading perfectly reasonable lives with it. And so I think the la 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 from Professor Jardine is just a little condescending.
Okay, and last word must go to Liz listening to this. What do you think, Liz?
My thoughts are that it shouldn't be up to the MPs to decide whether or not families choose to go for this. This should be the choice. The science is there. We should now move on with the science and allow our families the choice as to whether or not this is the right option for them.
Thanks so much for joining us, Liz. All the best to you.
Thank you.
Liz Curtis, whose daughter Lily died of mitochondrial disease at 8 months, and also Professor Jardine is in favour of this procedure that's being voted on today, and Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's going to vote against. Radio 2.
My lover's got humor. She's the giggle at a few.